Now, when Moses held up his hands, Israel prevailed. But when Moses let down his hands, then the Amalekites prevailed. Now, Moses' hands grew weary, and so Aaron and Hur rolled a rock underneath him, and Moses sat on it. Then Aaron and Hur stood on each side of him and held up his hands. And Moses' hands were steady until the sun set. And Joshua abolished the Amalekites. And that's the story. Now, can I get a volunteer to tell this story? Just as much as you remember. Oh, thank you, Vivian. And let me give you the start of the story. The Amalekites came out and to fight the Israelites at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua,
go find people in Israel to fight the Amalekite. And he and Aaron and Hur is going to go up down the mountain. And while Joshua brings the Israelites to fight the Amalekite, Moses will raise up the staff of God. And whenever the staff of God is held up, Israel prevails. And when Moses hands down, the Amalekite will prevail. And at some point, Moses' hand gets tired. So Aaron and Hur rolled a rock so Moses can lean on or sit on. And then they each held Moses' hand. And so he was able to have a steady hand until the sundown, I think. And they went, or that's it.
Yeah, that's it. You did a great job. And it's so fun. You remembered not only the story, but I think just about every hand motion that I used. So I'm very honored by that. So let's go over the story again. And I think everybody looks like they're unmuted. So that's great, because I want everybody to join in. And so the Amalekites came out to fight the Israelites at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, I think this is going to be a big mess.
No.
What did he say?
Men to fight.
Okay. Choose some men to fight. Excellent. And what else?
He was going to go up to the mountain with the staff of God.
Yes, he's going to go up to the mountain, to the hill with the staff of the Lord. Does anybody remember when he's going to do that?
Nope.
Vivian?
Sunrise?
In the morning?
Yeah, in the morning. And so Joshua did what Moses said, and he went out to fight. And then Moses went up the hill. Anybody remember the two guys that went with him?
Aaron and Hur.
Aaron and Hur, yes. And when Moses lifted up his hands, what happened?
The Israelites.
Yes, the Israelites prevailed. And when Moses put his hands down, what happened?
The Amalekites prevailed.
Yeah, the
The
Amalekites.
Amalekites prevailed. So then Moses' hands grew weary.
Yeah.
And what did Aaron and Hur do?
Rolled a rock underneath him.
Yeah, got a rock.
They rolled a rock underneath him and he
Sat on it.
sat on it. And then where did they stand?
To his right
Either
hand to
side.
hold up his hands.
Yes, they stood on each side of him and held up his hands. And they held his hands steady
Until
until when?
sundown.
Oh, until sundown. And at that time, Joshua
He abolished the Amalekites.
abolished the Amalekites. And I think some of the translations use different words. Actually, overwhelmed. I'm going to go with overwhelmed. Overwhelmed the Amalekites. Great job. Now, this is the first time that Israel has encountered an armed force since they came out of slavery. How do you think Moses might have been feeling when he sees the Amalekites coming with their swords and stuff?
Maybe a little cocky. I don't know. I mean, he had seen the Lord just do amazing things. And when he took the staff, you said this is right after he struck the rock and water came out. So maybe he's thinking this is going to be a piece of cake.
Okay.
So
What is some of the rest of you think?
this is like within their first year out, like in the wilderness. This hasn't been like.
This is pretty quickly. It's in the first,
Okay, right.
and probably we count it in days rather than,
Okay.
I think, in days rather than
It's
in
probably
evenings.
before they realize that this is going to be for a long time.
I
Yes.
think Moses would have been terrified. Because it's one thing to depend on God, it's another thing to depend on a bunch of ex-slaves to fight an organized army, but guys who have never been trained in warfare to fight people who have. If I was Moses, I'd be like, oh man.
I feel like it was, I think he probably felt unfair. This is unfair. It's unfair.
What's not fair about it, Andrew?
Well, like Butch said, no training. Okay. We're just traveling through wherever. We got all our families with us too. Okay. We're nomads. We have no homeland. And these people, for no reason, I mean, there's no known reason for them to attack. They could have talked. They didn't. So unfair. It's not fair.
Hmm. Anybody else want to say something about this one? Let's take a look at this first part of the story. Now, the Amalekites came out to fight against the Israelites at Rephidim. And Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men and go out and fight the Amalekites, and I will stand on the hill in the morning with the staff of God." Okay. That's just a little piece, but let's take a look at that. What do you think we can learn about the Amalekites spiritually from their coming out against Israel?
I can't help but wonder if maybe they hadn't already heard some of what God had done on behalf of Israel, and this could be a preemptive thing, like, man, we need to deal with these people before they get established. And they wiped out the Egyptians. What if we're next?
You know, in Rephidim, that's where they got the water. It's where Moses hit the rock and water came out, like you said. They may have wanted access to that water, or may have wanted just sole exclusive access to the water.
Maybe they saw a ragtag band of people and they thought that it would be easy pickings.
Hmm.
And they would have been a really big group, sorry, of people. There were thousands and thousands of them wandering there too. So I think that's interesting that I assume the Amalekites probably felt pretty bold and like powerful to be able to go against all of those people, even if they're not soldiers. It's still just, there's a lot of them.
Yes, there are. I thought that was kind of odd too. Andrew? I mean, excuse me.
Sure.
I was thinking maybe they were going for the booty because, you know, when they left Egypt, they took a lot of, you know, riches from Egypt. So maybe somehow they knew that, maybe rumors or something, and maybe they were thinking, you know, if we prevail over these people, we'll get all those riches from Egypt that they have. And they had livestock too, a lot, right? Because that was their job there. So, well, they were slaves. I don't know. Before they had livestock, I don't know about if they had too much livestock as slaves.
That was the whole hangup, is that the last plague was because they wanted to take their livestock and Pharaoh said no. And so after the plague, he said, go, get out. Take your animals with you.
Does anybody see any good motives for these guys? Your motives are not looking that good.
What does the text say? Can you remind us exactly what it says?
Yes, it simply says the Amalekites came out to fight the Israelites at Rephidim.
I mean, I guess a more good motivation could just be that these are a lot of people and they're coming their way, and maybe they're just on the defense, or like not so much defense, they're still being offensive because they're going out, but maybe being proactive against what the Israelites could be doing. So they're just trying to protect their own land.
So looks like you all have got a lot of negative motives. And I think we can maybe keep that in mind as we continue in the story. Now, Moses gives Joshua a command, and he says, choose men to go out and fight. What other choices might Moses have had in who he picked?
Negotiation. He could have chosen negotiation as a way. What do y'all want? Why are you fighting against us? Let's negotiate.
He could have taken the command himself.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
He could have taken the command himself.
He could have taken the command himself. Yeah, Moses could have said, I'm going to lead you guys. Is there anybody else he could have picked?
Caleb.
Could have picked Caleb. Okay.
I'm picking the biggest guy in the group.
Yeah.
I'm kind of with Andrew. I mean, they had all that booty, so like, yeah, here, hey man, here's a chest of gold. Let us come through and leave us alone.
Okay.
They could have ran away too.
Mm-hmm.
He could have called down, wrath like that happened to the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
They're going through the Amalekites' land.
It's not quite clear from the story if they're going through the Amalekites' land. They are in a remote area where there wasn't very much water. So it may be land that's a little more nomadic. But I didn't see anything in the story, and you all didn't seem to come up with anything in the story that says motives, there's a real good reason for doing this. Could he have chosen Aaron to do this?
I think Aaron was a priest, right? I don't think that, I was thinking about this the other day about Aaron being chosen and being the Levite, right? So I think Aaron was a priest. I don't think he was a priest and a spokesman. Let's call him a statesman.
Yeah. Has the priesthood been established yet?
That's what I was wondering too.
Have they gotten to the mountain and done the 10 Commandments and all of that yet?
They don't have a tabernacle or anything yet.
No. Yeah, Sharon.
So I think Aaron wasn't his older brother, and Joshua's younger. I wonder if that has something to do with why he chose Joshua.
Okay.
Also, Aaron has been by his side as an advisor and as a spokesperson type role all this time. I mean, Aaron's been privy to the inner workings of government, so to speak. I don't, even though, such as we can call it, I really don't think that he's like this mighty fighting man.
Yeah, maybe Joshua has shown himself to be more of a leader in army situations. Perhaps. Not that our story tells us that, but.
Yeah, perhaps. We don't see any fighting prior to this, but maybe he's shown something that Moses wants to affirm. Okay.
Well, Diane, are we told in the story that Moses picked him, or because I'm just wondering in the story, the fact they go up on a mountain and hold a rod up for a battle just seems kind of dumb to me. So obviously God's communicated with him in some way. So are we told in the story that it's Moses or God, or are we told specifically who it was that picked?
We're not specifically. We hear that the Amalekites are coming up, and the next we hear from is Moses simply communicating to Joshua, saying, "Choose men and go out and fight the Amalekites, and I will stand on the hill with the rod of the Lord." So we don't hear from God in this story. All we do is observe. So
that's interesting in and of itself, how Moses commands these things, and we don't particularly know whether it's because God told him to do it, or maybe he just kind of knows God well enough right then to know that this is something God would want him to do. It seems like God is for it, given that when he does hold it up, the Israelites are prevailing. So God does seem to be in the midst of it, but we don't hear how that decision came about.
Yeah, I think that's a good observation, Sarah, that looks like Moses seems to maybe have some freedom here, or we're not being let in on part of the story.
Yeah.
So what effect do you think it might have had on Joshua and on the Israelites for Joshua to receive this command?
He could have been afraid.
Okay.
I think he would want anyone else to be in charge but him. I mean, you know, this is the first battle, and if it goes wrong, I'm the one they're gonna hang. And I've never done this before, and young man, so.
So you're saying, you're saying this is kind of high stakes for Joshua?
Well, yeah, because I mean, it's a professional army going against non-professional, you know, a weekend warrior type people that go hunting and then put on camouflage. And so we're soldiers now. We're going to storm the Capitol building. It's not an army. He's not in command of an army. He's in command of some men. Choose men.
Do we know that the Amalekites are a trained army? Do you see that in the story?
They seem to at least be like an actual nation, like a rooted nation. So it's more likely that they are trained than the Israelites are.
What does the rest of you think? Yeah, sure.
It seems like they're probably more organized than the Israelites because they're the ones that they decide to attack, right? So you can imagine these Israelites just trying to get together as quickly as possible. Joshua, you know, quickly rallying these men. And so they were probably pretty unorganized, but Joshua really had a desire after the Lord. So, and when all of them see that Moses is going up there with the rod, I think that gave them a lot of confidence with God's rod. I think they could know that God was going to fight for them.
They certainly endured, right? I mean, in terms of the Israelites, obviously they had some period of time where they were not prevailing, and then periods of time where they were prevailing, depending on what was going on with Moses's arms. So, but we don't see them deserting. We see them continuing to fight, right? Even though they had periods of time where they were being overcome. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, let's move on to that part. Let's move on to that part of the story. Just let me refresh your memories for that second part. So Joshua did what Moses said and went out to fight the Amalekites, while Moses and Aaron and Hur went up on the hill. And when Moses held up his arms, Israel prevailed. But when Moses' arms came down, the Amalekites prevailed. Now, when Moses' arms grew weary, Aaron and Hur rolled a rock under him and he sat on it. And they stood on either side and held his hands. And Moses' hands were steady until the sun went down. And the Joshua overwhelmed the Amalekites with the sword. I don't know why I have a hard time with that word. So we see that Moses is up on the hill and he's holding up the rod. And Sarah's already said that must, I think Sarah and Butch have both said, that must have been an encouragement to the Israelites. What do you think would have been the effect on the Israelites of Moses having his arms holding the rod that had already been used in several miracles?
Maybe reminding them what God has already done. I mean, it must have been something for them to look up on the hill and see him with his hands up like that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like an accident that they went someplace where the guys could see them while the battle was going on, you know? I mean, you could have had your leader placed someplace in safety, because in some ways that almost makes him a target, right? Like, oh, hey, dude, look at that. That guy's, we need to get him. And maybe the fact that they kind of saw that staff as almost a magic kind of thing, you know, like, whoop, whoop.
I think it was mentioned earlier that he used that rod just to give them water. And so they've always gotten something when they see that rod, something positive usually happens. I think they're growing accustomed to that aspect.
I think there's another side of it too, that the Amalekites are also seeing the rod, and perhaps they are fearful of the power that it has. Maybe even the story of the rod striking the rock had even reached their ears through, you know, word spreads in cultures like that. Even in other stories, it said that the stories of the Israelites had reached the ears of peoples ahead of them.
Yeah.
That drove fear. Their hearts, you know, melted away at the thought of the Israelites coming to them later on in the Bible. So, yeah, I think that having that visible was a reminder to the Amalekites that they weren't just fighting against Israel, but they were fighting against something more powerful. I don't know if they knew what that was, but necessarily, but they, yeah. It seems to be, to me, when I think of somebody's arms raised up, I think of prayer and reliance upon God. And so the fact that his arms are dropping down and then people are coming to even support him is like, not just Moses is praying, but everybody's participating in that desperate plea before the Lord to work on their behalf. I'm sure that when they saw that when the rod was there, maybe even the people that were fighting started to pray that they would have strength to keep that rod held up before the Lord. Like, yeah. It just seems to me like you could see it as they're focused on the magical powers of a rod, but it's always been shown that it's God who's working through Moses, and God is the one who gave the rod to him and ordained the rod to be used as a symbol of his power. So that, yeah.
And it had been, right, during the plagues, and again with the water that Diane told us about.
I have come to the end of my time, but if I could have just a couple minutes to do one application. Thanks. Sorry, I got all caught up in y'all's discussion. It was very good. I'm not blaming you, but I'm just saying I got caught up in it. Do you think it happens today that sometimes an enemy or an obstacle comes up against us or against you that seems pretty formidable, but God gives you something that you can look at that reminds you of his commitment to you?
Yes.
What do you think that might look like in the world around us?
Memorials, you know, we have them for every nation I've been in has different memorials to remind them of things that have happened in their history. For me, there are places that I remember God has done particular things in my life, and it reminds me of his faithfulness.
Or a particular hymn, I think. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, songs are powerful.
Yeah,
I think
they've already sang a song when they left Egypt, didn't they? So they've already have like, they've got a couple memorial things that they've got going on.
Yeah, yeah. They stacked some stones, and I think, and they also had the ladies came up with a nice song to commemorate drowning all those Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
In your own life. What?
They were
I
singing.
think like one thing that came to my mind was no, even though we are not meeting physically as a church when during COVID-19, knowing that we have an elder team who is holding up the needs of our church has been encouraging to know that you're not alone, but that you have like church leadership that is actually kind of like fighting on your behalf. There was often reports from our church back home that from the elder team that they're praying and seeking that the government would act on behalf of the church to allow more people to meet. And that was more encouraging to me than a lot of other things. Just like seeing people that are in leadership who are actually taking a stand and yeah.
Yeah, our church has prayer 3 times a day on Zoom, and sometimes people will come join just so that they can put forward something difficult that they're going through. And we have a number of people dealing with cancer. Is there anybody else that has that kind of raised staff? Yes, Cheryl?
I just want to share something that happened that this makes me think about this situation here in Mexico. There's a mission agency called WEC. They bought a very large piece of land and started making a mission training, where a center where they could train missionaries to go to all over the world, and where they could use for a lot of different things, retreats and camps. And so they worked on it and everything. They had buildings on it. They had they were using it, and all of a sudden this group of people from the community came in and took it over, pushed almost all of the people off and took it over and said that they really didn't have the right to be on that land. It didn't belong to them. So after that, there was a long case about who really legally owned the land and all of that. Finally, I don't know how long it went on, maybe a year. Finally, and a lot of people, Christians and churches were praying for them. And finally, when they won the court case, they invited all of us out to the land, all of the churches in Cuernavaca to go, all the people to go and pray and have like a rejoicing service. And I remember we were all out there singing, and they were telling the whole testimony of how everything happened and everything. And then in the middle of the service, there was somebody said, "Hey, look up. If you look up, there's some," and up above us, there was this beautiful, so clear, just perfect circle, rainbow. I had never seen a circle, just the whole circle rainbow right above us. I mean, it was gorgeous, and it was just, everybody took it just as a sign from the Lord. And even after that, they had still some times when they had to fight some legal battles with these people, but they remembered that rainbow and how that night God had put that rainbow there. And that was just a real encouragement to them.
Wow, thank y'all. I think military battles are pretty scary, but legal battles really frighten a lot of people. And I know COVID has seemed like quite the adversary to come up against. So in this week ahead, is there something that you think you might look for if you encounter an unexpected challenge or adversary? I know some of you had mentioned, you know, songs as kind of things to look at.
I think it's kind of hard sometimes for us to remember to look up. You know, when you say look at, I think looking up and remembering who our help comes from. And that he's, you know, he was lifted up on a hill too. And when he's lifted up, he prevails, you know. So that's the promise that we have. And yeah, and when we can trust and rely on.
Thank you. Thank you. I like that. Look, actually physically looking up, I think it does sometimes do something for us that reminds us about God. Really,
you know, Diane, I'm kind of at the age where I realize I've got a lot more years behind me than I do in front of me. And that's okay. I mean, it really is. And there's a lot of times, you know, and in dealing with young people, they're all kind of freaking out by the things that are happening here in the United States right now. And I haven't at all. It hadn't really affected me much in any way, shape, or form. And a lot of that's because I'm looking to the end. You know, I'm closer to the end than I am to the beginning, and that's okay. I mean, it's not like I'm gonna, you know, run my car into a wall, so you can relax. But you know, I'm not dreading the day that I take my last breath here and wake up there. You know, and so I kind of looking ahead to that. I enjoy every moment I've got, but I realize there are better moments ahead, and that whatever happens here is temporary.
You don't have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, you guys can handle all that. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, you younger people, it's all we
Amen,
Sarah.
well, thank y'all for letting me have a little bit of, Butch for letting me have a little bit of extra time. And you, I always love this, where people kind of bring their own experience in with the story. I love hearing that part. So thank y'all for sharing that.